If you are a startup looking to grow in Cambridge, the Bradfield Centre offers a range of flexible membership packages which put you in control of your office and home working mix. There's a vibrant, collaborative atmosphere, on-site cafe, plenty of green outside space, and regular member social events. We also offer a range of high-quality meeting spaces for hire, and for tech event organisers, our auditorium, lakeside pavilion, and atrium spaces are perfect to bring your communities together for in-person and hybrid events. For more information, visit bradfieldcentre.com or call 01223 919 600.
Welcome to the Cambridge Tech Podcast, talking all things technology from the heart of the UK's tech capital. Here are your hosts, Faye Holland and James Parton.
I'm Faye.
And I'm James. So Faye, how was your week this week?
It's been splendid. I can't work out. There's two things happening, right? Either people are going really quiet because I think they're winding down, or they're going proper mad to try and get everything done. And I seem to be stuck in the middle of both of those. People going, no, it's fine. Let's not do it in January. Let's do it in March, which is okay. That's fine. And then others going, can we have this right now? So yeah, it's a little bit manic at the moment, but it's coming close to Christmas. I'm getting more festive. So I've got my Christmas trees up, which is a good thing. And, therefore everything, I constantly wear a Christmas jumper at the moment, which people are really shocked about. Like they're going, we didn't know you'd be a Christmas jumper person. But
really?
There you go.
You love Christmas. And I
love Christmas.
And I love the plural, Christmas trees, because this is now a bit of a running joke on how many Christmas trees you have up in your house, right?
Yeah, it is. I'm still one.
How many this year?
Well, I've got one in Gary's shop. I've got 3 in the house with all the peripheral decorations, but I've still got one more to put up. So, but that may go up before Christmas. Who knows?
So I'd just like to point out the Bradfield Centre's 40,000 square feet and we've got 2. So you're doing okay there.
I can help you fix that if you like.
Yeah, maybe you should.
Yeah. Anyway, so you've just asked me what I've been up to and I just think I've talked and I've got no idea. So have you got anything sensible to add to that question?
Not really. I mean, Trinity Bradfield Prize is now, we've now selected our finalists. They know, but I haven't actually announced this publicly, so that'll be coming out in the next few days.
So I should rightly, you always push people on the podcast, is that an exclusive? So I'm going to do that to you. No, okay.
But I could do, maybe next week I can do it as an exclusive. We just got to tie up a few little logistical things. So yeah, hold that thought. I might bring that next week. And also, I wanted to give a shout out to Will Foote from Cambridge Mechatronics. So I bumped into him in the Bradfield Centre and he's another super fan. You know how we keep bumping into people? So Will told me there's only about 4 episodes out of, how many have we done now? Like 118? I think he's listened to 114 of them. So that's not bad going, is it?
Right, so Will, you're listening, right? I've got a challenge. I've got a challenge for you. You're going to love this. We're going to do a mastermind episode with Will Foote from Cambridge Mechatronics.
Well, like a trivia, like a quiz.
Yeah, absolutely. Like how many times has Faye fallen off a chair? Just things like that, not just always the tech things. But Will, answers on a postcard, please, whether you want to take us up on that challenge. Oh, dear. Anyway.
I hope it's no, because that means we'd have to write the quiz.
What you saying, James?
Well, yeah, I'm too lazy to do that.
Oh, no. Well, let's see if it becomes a problem we need to fix. Anyway, we need to cover some news stories. So do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so news coming from a Cambridge University spin-out, Illuminon, who've just closed a £2.1 million seed investment. That was led by the team at Foresight Group, with additional participation from Cambridge Enterprise Ventures, Parkwalk Advisors and Cambridge Angels. Illuminant are commercialising a revolutionary microscope technology known as charge photometry. This visualises in real time what is happening to a battery material during charging and discharging. The investment will enable them to expand their team, develop their advanced analytical software and pursue new market opportunities. So congratulations to them.
Absolutely. And congratulations also to a chap called Callan MacDonald, who's a University of Cambridge postgrad student who has won the cash award from PETA US's Future Without Speciesism contest for innovation that could revolutionise the lab-grown meat industry. MacDonald, who studies at Queen's College, received $2,500 for his winning invention, AgriCell, which is a first of its kind cell bank to archive and preserve the most advanced primary cells for meat cultivation. So he's super early at getting coverage over in the US. So congratulations to Callan. And he's possibly someone we should both contact for Trinity Bradfield and 21 to watch in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Our next story is acquisition news. Cambridge-based gaming industry innovator PlayFusion have been acquired for an undisclosed sum by Edinburgh-based international game developer and publisher Build a Rocket Boy. PlayFusion CEO and CTO Mark Gerhard is joining Build a Rocket Boy and will share the helm with the Scottish company's Leslie Benzies as co-chief exec. The combination of the two powerhouse independent studios is set to accelerate growth as Build a Rocket Boy continues to develop 3 core flagship products. And this reminds me, we've got to do a gaming episode next year. We've got to make that happen.
Okay, I will leave that with you in your very capable hands, James.
Okay.
So to end the news this week, we have a new initiative to share called the Cambridge Pledge. This is quite simply a mechanism for Cambridge entrepreneurs to donate or pledge a percentage of their current or future personal wealth, which, if you think of all of the startups in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, is estimated to run into many millions of pounds. And the reason they would pledge is to address Cambridge's growing inequality issue. And we've talked about that numerous times on the podcast too. So early pledges include Lucy Young. And many of you will remember we spoke to Lucy way back in episode 19. In an episode when I looked up the number, it's titled, "If I Did It, You Can Do It," which I think pretty much applies to what Lucy did at Charco as it does to her desire to make a pledge now. Into the future of a more equal Cambridge. So anyone who's interested in finding out more, please head over to cambridge-pledge.org. So that's all the news. So let's move on to today's episode then, James. This is one, I can't believe it was a month ago we went out on the road. This time we went to the launch of the Cambridge History of Innovation project at Cambridge University Library.
Yeah, I mean, we had a great time, didn't we? We met incredible people in an amazing building. I actually found the whole thing quite poignant, actually. Listening to the stories and, meeting these legendary names that you hear talked about all the time. I just kind of felt like it really kind of validates what we're trying to do with the podcast as well, because it'd be nice to think that this library of conversations, with the founders and the innovators and the organisations that are helping to build the Cambridge Tech Cluster might actually be of value to people in the future. So that's a hope anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. The people in that room, it was just amazing. It definitely felt like a school reunion. It was just an amazing group of individuals that were there 45 years ago and who are still really invested in the ecosystem today. And you'll hear from quite a few of them shortly. And so this, in true podcast style, this episode, we didn't know anything about the CHIP project. And then after a dinner hosted by Cambridge MC at Cambridge Tech Week, I spoke to Shai Vayakanam, who many of you will know from the Judge Business School and in many of the different academic and entrepreneurship companies. He's had a lot of impact across the Cambridge ecosystem, and he starts by introducing us to the CHIP project. So over to you, James.
So, Shai, thanks so much for taking some time out of a very busy day. Why don't we start with the why? Explain the background to the project and why you think it's so important.
Well, we have a lot of anecdotal evidence around the concept of the Cambridge phenomenon. And we have storytellers, a handful of them, who repeatedly tell the same stories. But when we look at the way that it's grown, and in fact, if you draw a timeline back to the 1880s when Cambridge Scientific Instruments began, I don't know that we have a deep enough understanding of how it all happened, who the actors and the players were, or the industrial context in which these things were happening. The 1880s was clearly the Victorian, industrial era. So we went through 2 world wars. Other things have happened that have caused technology to focus in on especially Cambridge's contribution. So, of course, the steroidal period of growth began some 45 years ago, but it's a longer timeline. And being somebody that's been involved in business schools for many years, when you look at the literature around innovation, understanding it, I don't know that we have a full enough and clear enough understanding of how innovation actually happens, what sits behind it, why it's motivated, why people start. So even just 2 anecdotes, I was accusing of anecdotes, but oral histories which we're collecting, both the successful companies that we've talked to recently, both started because the founders were told it couldn't be done. Even in my own case, the set up Center for Entrepreneurial Learning all those years ago, I was told it couldn't be done. That isn't picked up in textbooks on innovation. What's the spirit behind it? So it's very important for me, I think, to understand that, how serendipity and luck and all these other things play into it. So that's kind of a deeper why. So looking forward, say, what's the impact of this going to be? The impact of this could be that we have then rich insights in the primary evidence from which scholars can work on how innovation happens, because it's become longitudinal information. We'll have oral histories as primary evidence of what happened. So I think we can add to scholarship. So there'll be scope for people to do PhDs and things on this stuff. But equally, it's exciting enough that it can be used for public engagement, to tell stories for journalists and others to come in, and even the podcast is a great example of that. You'll have a resource and source material for that. And then as a result of that, hopefully it becomes a source of inspiration for future generation of innovative entrepreneurial scientists, kids, whatever that want to go down this field. So there's all of this coming together from the sort of sense of how does this all work? Finally, in 2005, I'd done a social networking diagram with my then colleague Upar Mint. She actually did the hard work on it, showing all the connections between the entrepreneurs that happened. We never understood why or how it happened. We just knew it happened. A bit like the SQW report, the famous report called the Cambridge phenomenon, to explain it. I'm hoping that this project CHIP will add to that body of knowledge and insight that we gain. Slightly long answer for the why, James, but hopefully it captures the spirit of what we're trying to achieve here.
Yeah, that's a great level set, so thank you for that. You touched there on oral histories, but my understanding is the archive is going to be much richer than just oral history. So walk us through the types of document and evidence that you're looking to collect.
So we're looking to collect maybe emails, contemporaneous notes that were made in notebooks by people as they were going through, technology, technical specification of the products they were working on, business plans, all of that sort of stuff. Most of that long time ago would not be digital. So there'll be a lot of paper copies of this stuff. So hopefully those will come through. To give you an example, the first business plan that Solexa did and presented to Abingworth for their gene sequencing machine, we've got that in our archive now. Fascinating document. We've got Glenn Collinson's notes from Cambridge Silicon Radio when Bluetooth took off. And he's got those 6 or 7 lines in his notebook of a call he had with Nokia. It's absolutely critical. It was called Blue Core by Nokia, and it was Bluetooth. And those sorts of insights into the key moments in the company's history. And we've got Matthew Bullock's letter to the board of Barclays to reset the way that lending should be done. So all of these are primary bits of evidence that we're collecting and archiving it. And of course, photographs as well, actually, to capture the overall look and feel of how the network works.
Yeah. Perfect. And this next question is a two-part question. What's the time horizon of the archive? How far back are you going? Are you going to be collecting current records as well? And then also the second part is, what sectors are you covering?
Right. So the timeline, I don't know that we can go as far back as we would like to. Ideally, we should go back to Cambridge SciTech Instruments' materials, but there's a wonderful book called Horace's Shop, which captures the early stages of Cambridge SciTech Instruments. And then you have a whole generation, 30, 40 years, I think, around things like the Radar Research Institute, Philips, Pi, comms, which happened. And I believe there's an entire set of materials around that whole development of how those things took off. Of course, Cambridge Phenomenon became famous with Cambridge Consultants starting in the mid-60s. But in the run-up to that, in the interwar periods and post-war periods, there's a lot of technology taking place and mostly physical engineering type stuff that was happening. So that's the bulk of the story. That's what I expect we will get. But there's, of course, the takeoff of the biotech sector, which happened much later. And I'm hoping that we can start to collect materials from that as well, to tell the story of this sort of Nobel Prize winning stuff that came out of Cambridge. I know we're in touch with Professor Greg Winter, got his Nobel Prize, 3-4 companies out of him. Aztec Therapeutics who started to put stuff in. So we're beginning to collect, if you like, the life sciences and chemistry companies as well as all the engineering and physics companies. So we want to tell the story of Cambridge history of innovation. So I think we're quite open-minded to the sectors. We would also like to collect materials bit by bit, so how the ecosystem works, the role of colleges, the role of science parks, the role of the networks, and all of those sort of other agencies around. In fact, it would be brilliant to also collect materials from venture capitalists, from the lawyers, although they're probably sworn to secrecy, so we'll see what they can reveal to us. But all of those commercially sensitive materials as well, beyond a certain point. For me, their interest is also about the people and how they interact with each other. So we need to that's why the oral histories are important. But we need the physical evidence, and we need to tell a complete story of the phenomenon, not just, anecdotal stuff about the heroic stories of a handful of people.
Yeah, I think that's really important, isn't it? Because yes, the archive will contain the evidence of the inventions, the business deals, but any healthy, vibrant cluster really only becomes successful based on the quality and the depth of the networks, the support, the collaboration, which I think really is a really interesting side of the story that needs to be told.
Yes, I'm hoping that we can start gathering materials from things like Cambridge Network, Cambridge Wireless, and all the other various agencies that are formed around. They play a key role, especially in hosting events, actually, where people come together, and that's all kind of part of the unseen elements of how the network forms, conversations that take place that then result in new ventures, new companies taking off, and sometimes even new cocktail bars being set up.
Absolutely. There's a shout out to the lab there. Well, that's fabulous. Thanks so much for taking the time to come onto the podcast.
My absolute pleasure.
And we hope that listeners will want to get involved with CHIP.
I hope so, because there's a strong story to tell here. We have the website on the library website, so it will be cam.ac.uk/CHIP, or if they even Googled Cambridge History of Innovation Project, CHIP, it'll land on that page. And obviously they can drop us an email.
We can direct any inquiries that we get from the podcast to you, so that's fabulous.
That would be perfect. Thank you, James.
Thanks so much.
Pleasure.
That was a great overview from Shai. Shai mentioned Matthew Bullock in his intro, and I managed to catch up with Matthew, who has been name-checked many times already on the podcast. I started our conversation by asking Matthew about how groundbreaking his decision was to provide the £1 million to Acorn Computers, and whether he had any idea at the time how much impact it would have on the Cambridge story.
It arose because Herman had actually run out of his money at the NatWest, and they didn't know how to lend him any money. And Herman asked if he could, phoned up and said, could I borrow £1 million? So Walter and I were involved with this, and we actually worked as part of the network with Cambridge consultants from the bank. I realised that we had to have a technical analysis of what the problem was. So we asked Richard Cutting, who's the CEO of CCL, if the bank could get a report, technical analysis on what the problem was. And if that was okay, then we agreed that we would make the funds available, because we knew that they had already got all the consumers' money in an escrow account if they could produce the computer. So in a fortnight, we had a note back from CCL saying it's quite a simple problem. It's of course a heat sink problem. They could just redesign a bit of this PCB and they could go. And so then, okay, we took the funds. We went to our local director, who was Edmund Parker, and said, we think we should do this and it'll be repaid quite quickly. And he then went to London, and London said, you're crazy, and we will actually write it off now as you make the investment, but go ahead, you're free to do that if you want to do that. So we made the investment, and it was repaid within 2 weeks.
It's amazing. I did always wonder whether it was you just said yes and you asked for forgiveness later, but it wasn't like that at all.
Yeah, you have to analyse these things and what was actually involved, yeah.
Okay, so my second question then, which is another event of note, was the meeting of minds 45 years ago in the Eagle, a pub in the centre of Cambridge across the road from your then office. And that meeting is recognised pretty much as one of the most pivotal moments in the advance of Cambridge. So did you just wake up one morning and go, there's got to be some synergies here, let's get a few people together and see what happens? And who came along?
Okay, that was Jack Lang, and Jack was an entrepreneur, and we were talking about the companies, and I'd been involved with one company, I knew one or two others. We had a chat, and we said, well, why don't we have a drinks and try to see how many people we could find? So we got a list of all the technology companies that we knew of, and there were 19 people who came to the Eagle, and we chatted. They all met each other because they didn't know each other. It was quite important. There were very few people who knew the others in the room. So when we done the introductions, they said, well, are there any others? And they said, well, yes, there's this. And it came out there were 36 companies in Cambridge, technology companies at the time, which is a very small city at the time. It was a very quiet economy. And we just looked, wow, 36 technology companies in this small town. Well, you know, we don't know why, but my God, it's a thing. And we said, being because we're all academics trained up in Cambridge, we all said it's a phenomenon, and we didn't know what it was, but it was a thing. And so we then started off to keep records of it all, and it goes on from there. The key point about it was it put the network together, so people got to work together as the entrepreneurs. Then and then with Walter came involved with that. We went round and talked to the people in the colleges, in the council, in the accountants, in the lawyers, and just said, look, we're getting involved with this. Why don't you get involved too? So we created then this kind of environment around these people, entrepreneurs, which then created the kind of the background for the growth of the Cambridge phenomenon.
Yeah, and that's it, the start of the snowball. And actually, you just mentioned there about, people coming together, sharing things. You now find yourself the chair of the CHIP Advisory Group, which is building this amazing archive of that Cambridge phenomenon. So what are you looking to achieve from the project?
Well, I think we're just trying to make sure we get it all drawn out of people before we all go into sunset, because we're all getting old now, 45 years old. And the idea is that we will just have people giving their memories. That's just gathered. We aren't trying to analyse it. Just get it all drawn in as a one particular big, archive. And then over time, people will come back and say, we want to understand how this happened and who was important and so forth. So it's a resource for researchers to come. But it's fantastic meeting all these people again after 45 years and just realising what we've created in this last 45 years.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. It's like a little school reunion. So I think it's brilliant. So thanks very much, Matthew.
Pleasure.
I then spoke to Alan Barrell, who's been active in Cambridge since 1966 and told us about those early days starting domino printing services.
Domino Printing Sciences hit the headlines because it was a company in inkjet printing with a wonderful new technology, and I got in quite by accident at the start of this Cambridge phenomenon, because Domino was one of the first companies that really took off, one of the first 100 that reached any size at all and became a world leader and was sold eventually for over $1 billion cash to a Japanese company. I was long gone by then, so I didn't make a huge fortune, but I struggled on and worked with other companies, and I've had the pleasure of working with many, many startups. My background is medicine, so I've done more bioscience than inkjet printing and worked with lots of companies that have now succeeded and grown internationally. And I'm particularly excited about how this has all become such a wonderful innovation ecosystem with science parks, technology centres, and I'm a great supporter of Innovate Cambridge, and I can only say I think there's much greater things to come because of the Cambridge phenomenon, and I'm very proud and pleased to have been part of it.
It was great to hear from Alan, and it's wonderful he's still so actively engaged and supportive of initiatives like Innovate Cambridge that will support what happens in the future too.
At the event, we then hear from Shai, Matthew and Herman Hauser, and also Dermot O'Brien, who spoke for the leaders in the room and encouraged everyone to bring their memories to the table.
I then spoke to Professor Barbara Sahakian, who, to be honest, she blew my mind. She was super interested in history of what she's done. And really interestingly for me, she brought together science, specifically around cognition, together with technology way back with Acorn computers at the start. And this is what she said.
I'm Professor Barbara Sahakian, and with Trevor Robbins, we co-invented Cantab, and that's a set of neuropsychological tests that runs on a computer and a touchscreen. It's now available on an iPad, and it was transferred by Linksvale to Cambridge Cognition some years ago. Now, we were very lucky because one thing that we could do in setting up one of the first sets of computerized tests for measuring different forms of cognition like attention, learning, memory, planning, problem solving, was that we had a brand new group of people working on computers, and that was Acorn computers here in Cambridge. So we were able to use those computers and then add a touch-sensitive screen to them in order to produce this product. And so we were really one of the first in the field to ever use touchscreen technology combined with these portable computers, essentially, that could be carried around different places. So not only could you do research to understand more about cognitive function in different people and how the different neural networks in the brain produce different forms of cognition, but we could also take them to hospitals and other places where we could assess patients, or they could sit in a clinic and assess patients there. So that was a really exciting development. I'm also a co-inventor with Tom Piercy of the Peak Wizard and the Peak Decoder. And these are exciting ways to improve in the case of Wizard, learning and memory, and in the case of Decoder, attention. And the idea behind that was that, if we're going to try to improve people's cognitive function, we should make it fun. These should be games that everybody wants to play. So we were able to do that. And fortunately, of course, we had Cambridge Enterprise who could tech transfer that set of games over to Peak, and now with PopReach as well. So we're very lucky in the Cambridge environment to have these different interactions, people to help you with tech transfer, people to help you with your when you have a good idea, how do you concretely put that into action? And we could do that through the Acorn computers and the novel development of touch-sensitive screens.
And quite right that Barbara references the work of Cambridge Enterprise at the end of her comments too. Next, I spoke to Mike Evans, who tells us about his journey.
I came to Cambridge in 1966 as an undergraduate, and some 50 plus years later, I've not yet left. So I came as an undergraduate to do engineering, but I found that the engineering department was still in the age of valves and steam trains rather than fancy things like electronics and computers. So I must confess, I was an appalling student. I found the university computer, and I found that the people in the computer lab were very helpful to me to indulge my passion of trying to use technology and computers. So that meant that when I did graduate, I actually had a career in computing. And I joined what is now Aveva, but then was called the Computer Aided Design Centre. And there we were developing software for mechanical engineering. And I was responsible for a project in computer-aided manufacturing called GNC, and then rose to become manager of the manufacturing group called MIG, Manufacturing Industries Group. From there, I went to Japan, and I spent 3 years in Japan selling software from a spin-off from the CAD Centre called Cambridge Interactive Systems, or CIS. And there I learnt a lot more about sales and marketing, and therefore, having learnt about sales and marketing, when I came back from that, having sold this software and having a small brass handshake for my efforts, I started a business. And the business was a consultancy. And the consultancy was to help startups based in Cambridge to do things. And I thought that the main business would probably be to help them sell in Japan. How wrong I was. I found out that, in fact, what people wanted was market information of one kind or another. So the business that I started, originally in my kids' bedrooms, we had to move all 3 kids into one bedroom so that we had space. People always say they start on the kitchen table, but in my experience, that's not true. And we started, and the business prospered and grew. And we ended up helping a lot of the Cambridge CAD startups. And the business became more and more international. We formed a federation with similar companies across Europe, did a lot of work for the European Commission, a lot of work for European CAD companies. And gradually, the business changed so that sort of by the end of the 1990s, then the vast majority of business was outside the UK, in Europe. And the business continues today, 40 years after it was founded. But now it's mainly working for European companies and US companies. It's a fully international business. I retired 3 years ago and is carrying on without me. So I didn't want to be the ghost at the feast, so I'm not really involved with the business any longer.
Yeah, that's a classic startup story of starting a business doing one thing and then morphing it into something else. And I like the bit as well about knowing when to move on, something we talked about actually last week with Raoul moving from CEO to chair positions. So to close off the episode, I'm going to talk to Katrina Dean and Peter Rees. So thank you both for hopping on the line and telling us a little bit more about Cambridge University Library and the library archive. So Katrina, do you want to give us a bit of an insight first of all?
Hello. Yes, my name's Katrina Dean and I look after the archives here in Cambridge University Library. The library is the research library of the university, but it also has an amazing collection that's consulted by researchers worldwide. And that includes some amazing scientific archives, so the papers of Isaac Newton, of Charles Darwin, and of Stephen Hawking. We've had a few gaps in our collection, and one of those is really around industrial science and technology. And that's the area that we wanted to work on in the context of this project, the Cambridge History of Innovation project.
That's great. So what are your ambitions then? What are those gaps that you want to fill, and how long is it going to take? Tell us a little bit more about what your plans are for the project overall.
The library is the home for something called the Cambridge Scientific Instrument Company archive, which was one of the first, I guess, if you like, industrial scientific instrument companies in Cambridge. And it was founded, among others, by Charles Darwin's son, Horace Darwin. We want to build on that legacy and work on collecting archives from individuals and companies who were involved in the development of Cambridge technology from, say, the 1960s on to the 2000s. This is a long-term project, but we're starting out, this is the second year of our project. And what we'd like to do is add archives to the collection and also carry out oral interviews, because there are some insights you can get from people's personal experiences that you may not find in the written record.
And Peter, I believe you've been undertaking some of those interviews already.
Yes, it's been completely fascinating. We've met with over 100 people from the Cambridge technology innovation ecosystem, and we've started doing in-depth interviews to capture their lived experiences of doing innovation in Cambridge. You know, what is it to be doing innovation? Where has it taken place? Who's been involved? What are the motivations? And we want to capture from these memories and experiences from across the board throughout the technology consultancies, the computing, telecoms, life sciences, all the different areas of Cambridge technology innovation.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because when I was at the event, I was looking at the notebooks and some of the letters, and I've talked about them on the podcast already. You know, it's really fascinating to be able to see the physical archives. But I know from even just doing the podcast, we had the interviews recently with David Cleaveley, and getting that three-dimensional conversation is, you know, and that input is really important and interesting in and of itself, isn't it?
Oh, I completely agree. And the physical documents can tell one story. They're really powerful because it allows us to go back to, say, 1990 or 1995 when that document was made. And without any blurring of hindsight, we get to see what was going on that day in 1990. So it's a fantastic resource. But we also couple that with the oral histories to capture people's memories, which can draw out all sorts of other aspects, like the emotional quality of the work and the social relationships that has been so important.
Absolutely. So how do people get involved? And first of all, I guess, Peter, the question for you is, how do they get involved to impart more of their knowledge into the archives?
Yes, thank you. I'd really like to warmly invite anyone listening to this to get in touch with the CHIP project. And you can get in touch most easily to me by email, pr381@cam.ac.uk, or just search CHIP at the Cambridge University Library and see our website online. There's 3 ways that you can engage with the project. The first is to donate documentary evidence from the history of Cambridge technology innovation. The second is through oral history interview. And the third is if you have any suggestions for funding opportunities or to introduce us to people, that would be very much appreciated as we try to grow this project and make it a long-term public resource.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Today's show was produced by Carl Homer of Cambridge TV and supported by our media partner, Business Weekly. The Cambridge Tech Podcast is available on all major podcast platforms and on cambridgetechpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It'll really help others discover the show.